think there's a long list of questions, but let's take. Some questions I will request all of you to answer, going around the panel. Some questions individually, whoever is interested, please chime in and answer. I think let's take the first question, which is, I can also sit, I guess, but can you see? Okay, yeah. First, according to you, right, students, according to you, what are the skills that the students from the summer school should pick up if they want to spend more time in this domain? More time, make a contribution, make an impact. Yeah.
So, in terms of responsible AI.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's important to understand fundamentals first, right? So before we jump into responsible AI itself. So it's like you cannot build the second floor without building the foundations, right? So understand AI, ML, deep learning and things like that, the basics very well first. I think that is the first skill, and then understand why we are even talking about responsible AI. And in the context, if you pick up both, mathematical ways of dealing with responsible AI and also the non-mathematical, like heuristic also ways of dealing with responsible AI, then it will be like a wholesome understanding itself, is what I think. So my point will always be, and I think I'll keep repeating this over the thing, is that never let go of the fundamentals, because I think that is the most important.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think as you have seen when you went through all these presentations, and as people here sitting from different kind of backgrounds and skill sets, right? What I like about this whole process right now and the way things are moving, especially when we are thinking about applications, is AI is becoming completely interdisciplinary. And you cannot just have one perspective of only technical understanding or just the perspective of policy or recommendations, but it's really important to kind of think of it as the interdisciplinary problem. And you would not be able to work in silos, right? So you might have the technical understanding of the foundations, but you might not be able to understand what are the responsible AI implications of harms of it. It would not be a good AI use case and deployment, right? So from this particular summer school, if you can kind of get that holistic view of why responsible and safe AI is important as you are kind of dealing with the technical skills of developing AI applications, I think that would be the biggest takeaway I would think that you should take from this particular conversation. And also I loved all these presentations, right? There are different points of views when you come from user perspective, when you come from the policymaker perspective, when you are an AI developer. And I think getting those different perspectives into account while you are developing something as engineers is I think the crucial part. So spending more time with domain experts, spending time with users, spending time with policymakers, and then developing your solution, coming up with, of course, most of you I understand is engineers here, right? So I'm saying that you are the AI developers, and hence taking those different perspectives into account and building the system would be important. So I would like you to take that as a takeaway while you are building your technical skills as well.
Yeah, some questions I think they said let's get everybody's view. The next question I'm going to also is everybody's view. So yeah.
I completely agree with both of them that if you just stick on to the technical part of it, then it's going to get very difficult to it. But we should first understand that, okay, this is why are we even talking about the responsible AI, because the implications are so huge, right? Like we have the UI Act wherein the penalties are going to flow in, like almost 7% penalties. That's a huge penalty. So even before it starts pricking in our dipping our revenues, we have to be ahead of it. And while you learn the technical part of it, you should be well versed with the regulation part of it. also. And it's very important for you to go and teach what you have learned from where you have come here, right? Because we are so much into AI development in the traditional ML way, that now with the LLM also we are very fascinated of what it is doing for us, but we are not thinking of the implications or the risk that is going to bring. So whatever you learn here, you should also go back and teach that.
So I come from the other side of the spectrum. Even though I have a degree in physics, my basic degree, we have to question. My emphasis would be on questioning, the critical thinking or critical approach that was mentioned by Tanuja. It's very important. You have to ask questions because we are not taught to ask questions. So when you want to look at the policy domain, you will be looking at 10 different angles, 10 different disciplines. So in that sense, you will be looking at both from the tech side as well as the policy side. Policy side is where you make priorities. Because if you make priorities, you are going to impact somebody badly, somebody in a good fashion. So that is where your understanding of ethics, politics, society, impact of technology, everything comes into play. So policy is actually the rarefied level which you go above everything else, because you are setting the agenda for the entire field. Like for example, you can take how to bat, but who's setting the rules for cricket or football or whatever? That is what policy does. So you need to know this discipline as well as a more abstract or conceptual understanding of the discipline for you to dabble in policy. So that's very important. That's the takeaway that I would say that you should have from this summer.
So what is AGI according to you? And when do you think it will come? If so, what would that be?
Yes.
Right? What is AGI? Potentially when? And if it comes, what will it be?
Okay. So for me, AGI is, if someone in this room has watched this movie Bicentennial Man, that is AGI for me, wherein the robo lives 100 years, then the robo falls in love with the woman and then proposes the woman, wants to marry the woman, and then woman says that you are not a human being, so I cannot marry. Then robo goes to the legal, that is to court, to declare as a human, and then they deny, saying that you don't have a death, so we can't declare. Then it goes to its maker and then induces all those human feelings and also fixes its death in the next 100th year. That is why the movie is called Bicentennial Man, wherein the robo lives for 200 years like a human being, right? For me, that is AGI, artificial general intelligence, because and I'm afraid of it also, right? Because I it's like I'm going to be replaced, and I don't want machine to do so much. I always want a control in machine. It should be like below me, not that I should not be replaceable for it. So when it's going to come, it's going to come in baby steps. So now from generative AI, we have already started talking about agents, and then we will start using agents to for example with GPT-5, we will to book a pizza. Now what we are saying is I just need to give a command saying book a pizza. It will know my choice. It's going to book. I only need to collect. Probably later to collect also I will have someone, right? And probably to feed me also I will have someone. So it is going to go in baby steps, but it will come. But we should be very cautious of how far are we going to let it go. It should not be controlling us.
Yeah, so I think the definition of AGI would get pushed as we reach one stage is what I feel. So right now I think we are really looking at self-learning kind of agents where the system would kind of start learning new skills on its own, keep improving, and that's kind of the loop, right? Once the system knows how to self-learn the new skills and build on top of it, come up with new ideas, execute those ideas, learn from those, right? As in that's really kind of is the spiral loop then to improve on its own. But then there are different aspects, as in human-like aspects, as in would the system start understanding emotions? Would the system start understanding interpersonal human ethical values and everything around which our human systems are kind of built, right? So do we want even the artificial systems to go there, or do we want to have those systems purely meant for humans? I think those are the kind of questions. But I keep often thinking, I think as Bharti said as well, I think it would come in like steps or iterations of AGI, and every time we would see new capabilities. Already I think there is a conversation which is going on that GPT-5 is going to be out and it's going to kind of come up with new skills. So I think that we are kind of pushing the boundary, and the speed at which it's happening is pretty high. But I also keep thinking, what are we going to do if the AGI really happens at each of this stage, right? I think that's a question that human beings, that we need to continue thinking as well, that if the system is going to do everything, where I would spend my time. I might do something good, but what that good is, I have not figured out yet. I think that is another question that I kind of continue to ask myself as well.
So since I'm the non-technical person, one of my students is actually a former Infosys person. Krishnan is working on with another professor in the US on co-intelligence, evolving of co-intelligence. So that's one way, but mostly in the healthcare system where they work with neuro issues. So how the mind controls the bodily functions, and then whether we can create something where there is a co-intelligence, and we can use prosthetic limbs for bodily functions. Those are very interesting, but what Tanuja and Bharati are describing, it's very scary. So I'll hand it over to Arun.
Who's probably going to make the situation more scarier?
No, not really. I think we'll never agree that, I mean, even in the future, right? So even if somebody claims AGI is here, right, so we'll still not agree, right? So because our definition of even I, forget AGI, right? So even I is, not very clear, right? So what is intelligence, right? So unless we clearly define that, then how can we say we have AGI, right? So I think this is a more philosophical question only, and it should remain that. In terms of application-wise, capability-wise, I think things will get better and better. Obviously, that will happen. Learning from data will happen, right? So we all learned from data as kids, right? But we didn't even know we learned from data, right? So, but the computer knows it is learning from data. So there is already a divide there, I think. So we'll never agree that AGI has come. That's my view, but that's a fun question to keep asking and answering, right? So and not bother too much about it. That's what I would say.
But interestingly, Bharati says this. You said you don't want to be replaced, no? Yeah, but I think all of us are going to be replaced. Okay, it seems like this question is a very popular question, so let me just read it as is also. Lots of plus ones have shown up for this. Given, so one is more the Professor Sudarshan, Sudarshan's deck, and the other one is probably for everyone. Given Apple's collaboration with OpenAI to integrate ChatGPT into their devices, and Elon Musk's concerns about data usage, is the privacy and data of users at risks because of this AI assistance? I think earlier also we talked about this, that many of these models are taking data from social media now. They're all signing up with Reddits, Facebooks, and Twitters. Now they're going to have access to all the social data. So what is going to happen to our, not just data, my personal information, so to say?
Yeah, privacy is an important aspect of being responsible in terms of AI, right? So, and that we have been seeing over and again. So that's one of the guardrails. So I think one of the very, in some sense, a better understood guardrail is actually privacy, as opposed to something like, let's say, explainability or something, right? So where, you can kind of give a better mathematical guarantee for privacy as opposed to explainability. So in that sense, it might be easier to impose certain constraints on privacy, certain requirements on privacy, even from a policy point of view, and we can even mathematically quantify that in a better way, right? So I'm not so much really worried about privacy, but the other aspects are what, right? So the other, for instance, explainability or hallucination and things like that are more worrisome for me as opposed to privacy. I think that's a personal take, because we have understood privacy better, right? So is my thing, right? So in the worst case, computers will, we'll become computationally powerful that everything can be cryptographic and cryptographically, made private. So that's less of a worry for me, at least. Yeah.
So from the social and political side, what is happening is that whenever something negative is spoken, it is being amplified manifold. So that incentivizes. So actually, the general behavior, for example, the filters that we have when we speak one-to-one among 4 friends or 5 friends or even colleagues, when somebody uses harsh words, somebody will say, "No, why are you getting angry? Why are you using harsh words?" Here, the negative, the other opposite effect is happening, because, for example, Trump becomes the president of the US. 15, 20 years ago, that will not happen. So that means there is some kind of a behavior that is being channelized. The toxic behavior, negative behavior is being channelized and amplified manyfold. So that means legally some of these things are allowed in the US and some other places as a freedom of speech. Whereas in India, that is not the case. But still our laws and rules and in terms of enforcement has not caught up. They are still unclear in terms of what these concepts are. So elections could be problems, there could be rioting. These things have all happened. So we are in a kind of a very dicey situation regarding this, because we have to look at 2024 elections in the US, because 2016 was the beginning, and Brexit was next, 2020 elections, many. So that means many of this privacy, private public distinction is being eroded, or in many ways is kind of tested. So that is what I see is the problem, because with all this integration that is happening, it's going to be a great challenge for the regulating agencies as well as people, because many of these were regulated by public sphere, where people would say this is wrong, should not do this, this is a bad behavior, good behavior. Now the question will be asked, who is going to say what is a good behavior, bad behavior, bad tweet or good tweet or whatever? So that is going to be left for the eyeballs, and so that filter is gone. So that is where my worry is actually I'm really worried about that.
Okay.
So I agree that I think amongst all the problems, privacy is one of the problem which is at least at the forefront and everyone is thinking about it. I feel that it need to be solved kind of holistically. I'll go back to what I presented in my earlier slide, right? The last slide. It's a responsibility of every stakeholder in this whole ecosystem. As a AI developer, what type of data that we are using for our pre-training, fine-tuning, or content knowledge information. Similarly, for the policy side, there is already different kind of countries are looking at the privacy of data in AI as part of different regulations, and I'm sure as the regulations would kind of would get more deliberated, privacy is going to be one of the important aspect that would be part of the regulations, including primarily what kind of individuals information can be used, what are the kind of copyrights on the data which is being generated with the help of, let's say, assistants of sort with humans kind of in a loop. Also those kind of things would come as part of the regulation, but also as the end users, right? It's also the responsibility of making sure that what kind of consents that we are giving to products and systems that we are using to access our data, what kind of information that we are putting out for the consumption, including the social media and other things as well, right? So I think it would be the responsibility of each of the stakeholder, but this is one of the problems which is already being discussed, which is a good thing, and I'm hopeful that this would get resolved, I think, as one of the first risks in AI.
Okay.
So I completely agree with all three, right? Because we have enough knowledge in privacy. But when it comes to voice, right, or the video part of it, I still have the concern. But since it is coming out of Apple, I'm sure that they know it and they are going to integrate it with complete responsibility. But as an end user, I will also rely on the legal team, right, and on the regulations to make sure that they have taken that consent. In fact, like last week, my son was in a banyan and he was talking to me. He turned my phone like this. I mean, we have the habit of keeping the phone like this with the camera up. He turned like this. I asked him why. He said he had a lecture. He's in 6th. He had a lecture from a professor on AI, and professor said that the phones can see you, the phones can hear you. So he's like, it's seeing that I'm in a banyan, so you better turn it. So we know the problem, right? But we are going to rely on the regulatory bodies and legal and these product development companies.
6th standard, right?
6th standard.
Okay. Okay. Amlan will give you a few seconds to catch up, but yes. I'll throw the next question. I think this question also could be, if you're okay, this question I'll repeat because I think you come from the background which can help answer this question in a different perspective, which is all these companies are actually getting access to our personal data in terms of building their models. What about privacy now? Where does it go?
Oh yeah, that's it's a big elephant in the room. Yeah, the way that I think about it is there is a way, I think we've seen through all of these slides, that you can really keep privacy front and center, right? To build privacy from ground up, right? So privacy by design, what does that mean in the context of developing and deploying AI models? We've had that in different contexts. I think we need to have that conversation, right? And in the Indian context, I think, as I mentioned in my previous session, the law unfortunately hasn't kept up, right? We don't have a sense of, for example, how to deal with anonymized or de-identified data. We have a purely kind of lens from personal data. But my personal point of view is that there are privacy risks associated with inferred data points or de-identified data points, right? Especially at a scale that AI models are dealing with, right? At a population scale, at a community scale, right? So we really need to take a step back and say this is not just about personal data. This is about data across the entire kind of value chain, right? From anonymized data all the way to sensitive personal data. Think about how we should protect each of these. 2 is from the company's perspective. I think thinking about building privacy from the ground up when you're looking at training, when you're looking at fine tuning, deployment. Like I'll give you one example. I was talking to some people, I think company from both Google and Microsoft, thinking about use of voice language, voice samples to train AI models, right? So it's all about multilingual, multimodal, multilingual models of the future. You need to collect language data from the entire Indian population, train your models on it, and then deploy it, right? A lot of these companies also want to make available the data sets that they have made available, that they have collected. So they're collecting data from different communities, making those data sets available for other people to train their models. My suggestion to them was, you might think intuitively that, if you release a large data set, that's good for privacy, right? You assume that only few data points, okay, very easy to correlate, interrelate. Large data set, better for privacy. But actually it's the opposite, right? If you have a large data set, right, it's easier to make connections between different data points, right? Even if it's been stripped of certain kind of identifying details, you realize that, okay, it is coming from a certain geography, right? So, sometimes our intuitions also lead us wrong. So you need to be very careful about how you're thinking about privacy across the entire phase. That's how I would say.
Sure. But this question is directed to Professor Sudarshan. I'll read it as is. So Gandhian policies somehow align with the communism, socialism aspects of life. So why would anyone who is living in the capitalist market would obey those principles in an era when companies are racing to generate billions of dollars?
Actually, Gandhi is very difficult to define, because that is why BJP also claims Gandhi, communists also claim Gandhi, capitalists also claim Gandhi. So since I am the political guy, so I can slightly be more provocative. The Home Minister made a very interesting comment about Gandhi. For other political parties jumped up and down. He said he was a Chatur Baniya. So you need to understand, because see, Gandhian model is not based on isms. No, he's called anarchist, he is called socialist, he is called everything. For him, what he did was, he worked on the ground. So his theorization happens from the practice. Generally, if you look at it, Marx talks about praxis and somebody else would say theory. Okay, so in the case of Gandhi, it's a very interesting mix of theory and praxis. So he will work on something and then he will theorize from there. Then the policy will evolve from that theory. So it is actually everything against the traditional management or economic understanding of how the social sector works or entrepreneurs work. Generally, business people do this, right? Business people and engineers do that. Even engineering is more lab-based understanding. But Gandhi was the person who turned this on the head, saying that, okay, you have to start from the ground. See, Swachh Bharat, the Prime Minister announced from Delhi, the ramparts of Red Fort. But Gandhi was doing it from village to village to village. So for him, this has to become the policy, not the other way around. Policy should not be implemented, but you have to work on the ground, then theorize and create a policy, then that loop is complete. That is why Gandhian understanding the loop is, if you look at, people can take from any country, right? For example, Mandela took it, Dalai Lama took it, so Martin Luther King took it. So people from all, see, this time when the Palestine issue happened between Israel and Gaza, former Prince of Saudi Arabia, he was actually the intelligence chief. I think, I forgot his name. He said that, why can't people follow Gandhi? See, remember, a Saudi Arabian prince, it's a monarchy, right? A monarchy, a prince telling the people of Palestine, why can't you guys follow Gandhi? So Gandhi is very difficult to define because his approach is not based on isms, but based on understanding how you theorize from praxis. So it is actually very interesting combination of Marx and capitalists, Adam Smith, everybody.
So now I'm wondering, who should we compare Gandhian to? The large language models or the companies?
Actually, that's why, like you say,
or the users?
Gandhian management, you have books on that, right? Gandhi is probably one of the most researched people in management, legal ethics. Amlan would have studied his, especially mediation. Gandhi is a father of mediation. You go to any mediation center, you'll see Gandhian this thing. Then business, Birla also supports Gandhi. So Gandhi is indefinable, basically. So that's why it's very difficult to. You can't say that he never goes out of vogue. He's always in fashion, right? So that's my answer.
Good. And I also did this. This is for the benefit of students, I guess. I also did this. So prompting in ChatGPT saying I'm moderating a panel discussion on responsible and safe AI with AI panelists being sort of say A, B, C, D with all their affiliations, particularly as a lawyer, professor at IIT Madras, Microsoft, Infosys. It gave me questions exactly for each person. Amalan, 3 questions. Professor Sudarshan and Arun together. It clubbed the IIT Madras professors together. And it says, ask these 3 questions. And then Tanuja separately and Bharati separately. If we get time, we'll get there. But otherwise, I'm going to ask the questions that students ask. Okay. So this is, what are the 2-3, keep it as short as possible if needed. What are the 2 or 3 most promising questions that you will work now or you would recommend the students to work on? Most interesting questions according to you, technical, that you would recommend students to explore. Technical meaning overlapping with legal, overlapping with social science, all that. That's not a problem.
That is, legal documents are too big. Legal documents are too big. So how will we convert these legal from documentation to code? Okay, that is one question.
Oh, legal documents to code.
Code. We have to codify the regulatories. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Okay.
Right? We can't just give them 100 or 200 pages document and tell them that now your AI development should be as per as these AI Act. Yeah. So we have to convert those regulations to code, which we call it as codify legal or codify AI Act. And the second one for me is like, what is this autonomous agents and how does RAI differs for the agents? Like all this while we have been working on responsible AI for like LLMs, large language models. But now we should be applying and testing the same thing, because definitely the use case team is going to use the agents. So what is there any difference, or is human in the loop or feedback to the agents, will those aspects takes priority precedence when compared to the other tenants? That's a question that.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So my background is in applied AI. So I always work on the problems, and the kind of criteria that typically I look at is what is the technological intervention that can have maximum impact, and when, especially if I'm looking into the societal problems, what is the smallest technological intervention that can have the amplified impact on society. So that's the kind of criteria or lens through which I'm looking at the problems, and hence I'm picking up some of the problems to work on in the education domain right now or in the healthcare domain. But in the last 1 year, my focus has been primarily on the equitable AI, because I see that as we are building the generative AI systems, if we don't address the digital divide and the equity aspects in the generative AI systems, that divide is just going to grow, and it should not be thought as the afterthought. It should be thought as the fundamental problem as we are building the Gen AI systems. So I would say that equitable AI and how the AI solutions can have maximum impact on society through the smallest interventions. So those are the two areas I'm looking into.
Fantastic.
I think they stole my thunder, so I have to think of something new. Since I'm interested in governance, I would like to focus on governance. Information, education, communication, or information, communication, education. These are the three things that we have to constantly emphasize if we want to reach people and create awareness about governance and bigger systems, really macro systems. So in that sense, I would like to use AI to improve governance and delivery, healthcare or economic policy, social policy, anything for that matter. So that is actually a major lacuna in terms of that the loop is not complete. So I think AI can really complete the loop of public policy. Thank you.
Very nice.
Two things I think similar to what you said earlier. I think when it comes to the legal domain, what I'm seeing more and more is that the law is always catching up with technology, right? So rather than have new laws that will help ensure compliance with responsible AI practices, can we use code to do that, right? This is what policymakers today call the techno-legal approach. And it's actually very popular in India, where there is lack of institutional capacity. So can you think about ways in which problems can be solved through technology? So obviously with deepfakes, right? Rather than have a law prohibiting deepfakes, we can use watermarks or labeling, right? So what are the other big problems, challenges we're facing today where technology can solve that, and you build that into the code itself, so you don't have to actually think about new laws to address those problems. So that's one as a technical research question, and two from maybe more of a legal policy question is increasingly I feel that individual agency and autonomy is going to get compromised, right? This whole idea of agents is about delegating our agency to a machine, right? So think about what that means for an exercise of our own rights. And I'm looking at it right now in the context of data and privacy, right? Which is, as AI becomes more autonomous, our agency in relation to our data gets reduced, right? And I'm seeing this more and more with our legal regimes, like the Data Protection Act. It doesn't even allow you to take your data from one platform to another, right? It's called data portability. India is very unique. We don't have a data portability right. So I would ask you to compare and contrast, right? In AI, autonomy is increasing, individual autonomy is decreasing. What does this mean for society?
Okay, great. So the next one, I think we had the social media question or the data that these models are collecting questions earlier. So this question is, look, I am on social. These models collect data. These models collect data from social. I'm not on social. I don't have a representation in these models. So what do I do? Meaning, what are the systems developers thinking? What are the companies thinking? How do I get represented in these models?
Yeah, I would say just from a legal context, there is in some of these laws like the GDPR, the Data Protection Law of Europe, it's called right to object, right? Which means I don't want to be part of a decision of a large database where there is automated decision making, I think we need to think about the reverse, right? Should there be a right to inclusion, right? So as much as somebody might say, I don't want to be part of this, somebody should be able to assert a legal right to say, I want to be a part of it. So we need to, I think, enable both in a way that I think we need to think about a right to be forgotten with the right to be remembered, right? So I just think across the board, we need to think about demographics on both ends.
So I think representation is a very deep concept. So I think it's like you have a choice here. Your choice is not to be part of an organization or a system or whatever. It's like voting, right? It's one of the fundamental aspects of democracy. But people don't vote or vote for nota. So they exercise that choice. I think this is your choice. Until there is a right to inclusion law, I don't think this can be addressed. It's your choice not to be part of a system or choice to be part of a system. Yeah.
But the problem there is that even though Tanuja also mentioned that, look, when you download the app and all, we agree, we accept it without reading all that. But if I don't do it, I don't get the service, no?
See,
Meaning
actually, that's what I'm saying. This is not to be equated with the fundamental concept of representation. For example, even in India, for example, there's a politics of representation, politics of ideas. Politics of ideas means conceptually you can participate, or conceptually you can think about things and then opine. And I don't have to vote, but I can opine about a lot of things. I'm not part of the voting system at all, but I don't even register for vote. But still I can opine about it, I can speak about it. So there is a politics of ideas. But then politics of representation, when it comes to that, means you have to be an agent, as Amlan just mentioned. You have to be an agent, active agent, to be part of that enterprise. So if I want to sit at home and then be represented, that's not going to happen. So that's only representation in terms of ideas, not in terms of practice.
Sure.
That is my response actually.
So I would say that the extreme case of this one would be what is already being thought as the personal bots, right? So every individual would have their own representation as agent. The agent would speak like you with your values and everything. So that's the kind of extreme where, but there are already experiments which are being kind of looked at, and there could be interesting applications where you do not have to go for a meeting, but you can send your bot for the meeting, and it would ask questions the way you would ask and bring the information back from the kind of meeting, and there would be interesting things, right? As in, imagine all four of us, instead of four of us, there are four agents, and they talk and come back with the information. So that's kind of being looked at as the extreme, but the work is already underway. So that's and if we want to kind of go for the personal bots, we need to definitely kind of deploy privacy preserving training techniques, right? So where your data would be used, but it would not kind of be part of the larger model, but have a representation which is specific to your personality and kind of thing. So that's one way of looking at it. But there would be another way of looking at it where there is a representation within the large language model, which eventually includes different dimensions of personalities, right? It could be political views, it could be cultural views, it would be let's say the gender based representation and things like that. So if there is sufficient amount of data, even if you are not kind of personally participating in that pre-trained, let's say, data set, if there is a enough representation of your dimensions which is being there in the large language model, tomorrow you can use that large language model and describe your dimension. You can say that I'm, let's say, a leftist as a political view, and with so and so age and gender, I'm an Indian nationality. And if there is sufficient amount of data which kind of brings those dimensions and values, it would be able to represent you as a personality. So I think we need to think about it both from like really using individuals' data and using it in privacy preserving way where personal bots are being looked at, but also if we do have at aggregate level enough representation of different dimensions, we should be able to have the representation of individuals to a great extent, even if you are not being included into the data set.
Yeah, I would definitely love those agents to be developed. Particularly, academicians would love that. I guess we are like triple booked, or 4 calendar invites are at the same time, and 4 different city, or at least 2 or 3 different cities at sometimes. So we can easily send an agent, or go attend this meeting and come back to us. Yeah, will be nice. Yeah, Bharati.
Infosys actually has put that demo piece for the Infosys ETA team. It's a robo which can get into a class and do the classroom trainings. So so it's
I don't know.
interesting.
I'm scared now. I don't know where this will go, right? Meaning an agent doing things. I don't know whether
It can do
an agent
classes.
go.
It can also answer the questions which is asked. So yeah, it's
So
all
next summer
planned.
school, agent would run it.
Yeah, we should not be surprised if agents are
Yeah.
running the next summer
Yeah.
school. Yeah. So coming back to your question, I would go with what he said, and that is we should have that right of rejection. Saying that I don't want to part of this app because I feel I'm not included. And here the question was more on the social media, right? But while we say that, okay, this is, we raise that rejection, or I would call it as an incident, right? An incident against an AI application. Now there are forums where we can go and raise those incidents. But I should also have some thought process of what is the solution to it. Some of the solution is probably like, if I'm not there on the social media also, is there a way that I can contribute? Right, can I be part of that development team? Can I record my voice, or can I record my language? I should also have some thought process of how am I going to include myself, because it's not going to stop there. The application is anyway going to roll and others are going to use. But if we feel that we are not part of it, we should also have some thought process that how do we include ourselves into it.
Sure. So next couple of questions, targeted questions. So not necessarily all of you need to take. First one is to Professor Sudarshan. So where is India in this whole shift of paradigms that you talked about with respect to Gen AI?
I can escape by citing Amlan, because Amlan said that in the previous lecture, India is nowhere in the picture. So in that sense, no, actually, India is a very difficult, is in a very, very difficult position, because we have the European regulations which are extremely stringent. And you look at US is very, very lax. Now only they are kind of waking up, and because of the pressures from the civil society, and also politicians who themselves feel that the social media is biased, and there is a lot of regulations, unwritten regulation on the part of different political groups and various things. And whatever happened in the last 6-7 years in the US, each side says that the social media is biased, and many of these big companies are taking sides and all those things. So in that sense, US is also in chaos. But in the case of India, as many of, I think, Bharati and also Tanuja mentioned, and also Amlan, we are in a very unique position, because I think third world countries and global south is looking at India for leadership. But what our problem is that, as was discussed in various other fora, we are not at the forefront of the AI revolution. See, only when we set the agenda, then we will have the responsibility of really thinking for everybody. But right now, we are kind of still laggards. That's what I would say.
Very
So in
nice.
that sense, we are there, but still not there. So I was reading an article. So whenever you look at AI, the ethical aspect of it should be baked into like a cake. You have to be baked into the system. So now if you look at many of the discussions in India, whether it's the policy side or the ethics side or technology side, these are all kind of scattered. You don't have a kind of AI is interdisciplinary. So the understanding should be, in terms of public policy, very nuanced understanding. But we don't have discussions even in television or newspapers or anywhere, even in journal articles from the Indian side. Very, very limited emphasis in terms of public policy, AI, regulation, AI, many of these things. Even the government is struggling to kind of come up with really substantive suggestions or regulations. So we are kind of still lagging. We are not there. People like Amlan and Bharati and Tanuja will probably take us there some point of time, but I'm still not there, so I can't answer your question.
No, very nice. I really like the way that you're saying that. Look, we have to be setting the agenda. Most of the times we don't. Okay, so now next question is to Bharati and Tanuja. This is more from the industry side. How do you ensure that the model has not been trained on copyrighted material without consent? Do you have any specific company policies associated with it? If no copyrighted materials is being used, then how do you maintain the quality of the training data? If a copyright has been raised, then what are the steps a company takes? So just around copyright, both from the training point of view and if there is a issue redressal, what happens?
At least in the closed model, we cannot make out because we don't know what data has been used to train. We only go with what the product company talks, and at the max we take an indemnity from them that they have not used any copyright content. But we have to just go by what they are saying. We will not be able to make out if we are using a model that is already developed by them.
So yeah, is it for the black box models? Right now, there is no way of checking whether particular data points were part of pre-training or not. So that becomes a challenge, and that would stay a challenge unless these proprietary models basically come up with what are the kind of data sets that they have used in public, right? So that stays as a challenge when we are using this GenAI in application domains as well, because there we really do not have any control about the kind of data which is being used in pre-training. But especially for fine-tuning and let's say if we are using these curated data sets, there definitely there is a policy to make sure that only the licensed content or open source content is being used as part of the model fine-tuning or even as part of the curated data sets. And there are also policies in place to make sure that if there are incidents which are being filed on specific data points, those data points are basically taken out of the data set, and there is again the retraining that need to be done of the model to make sure that there are no lingering effects of those data points in the larger data set. This becomes difficult, especially in when we are dealing with the internet scale of data and especially the large parameter models, because the retraining and the effect of that retraining would also take time to come back when you are deleting certain data points from the data sets. So that definitely stays as a challenge for larger models and especially black box proprietary models.
Yep. Okay, cool. Again, continuing with the industry questions, I guess. How is Infosys preparing for and any anticipatory measure expectations for a new AI Act? I think this morning Amlan mentioned about it. So is there anything that both the from a company's point of view that Infosys and Microsoft is thinking about it?
No, we will not be having a separate, so-called AI Act. We will have AI policy at the Infosys level, and we are working very closely with the Indian government as well to have our influence on the Indian AI Act. As it's getting formulated. But at the organization level, it is the AI policy that we have, which all the use cases should abide by.
Okay. But I'll go to Amalan also for his thoughts on what the AI Act will potentially be. But let's do Tanuja's industry side first.
Yeah, so I might not be able to kind of exactly say about Microsoft's preparedness because I come from the research lab, right? So my view is kind of, I would say, quite limited in that sense. But what I know from the earlier acts, including preparation for GDPR or any other kind of data laws which have come in the past, is primarily companies' policies are more restrictive than the public act which is being put together. And even from the current perspective, Microsoft's policy is anything which is put in the specific subscription, if that data belongs to a particular, let's say, customer in their own tenant, then that data stays private. None of that data is being used as part of any of the training or fine-tuning or taking it back for learning. So primarily that's the policy that company has taken. So most of the policies are going to be more restrictive rather than the general AI Act that would come together.
Yeah, I would say that in the Indian context, I think there will be 3 different layers or levels of regulation. One will be self-regulation, which is, I think, what you were alluding to, where companies have their own policies and they say we will regulate ourselves, right? And those policies can have all of the principles, fairness, equality, accountability, but there's nobody actually overseeing that, right? So it works because, as we've discussed earlier, regulation is very difficult to catch up with technology. So you want companies to be proactive. So there's definitely room for self-regulation. But I think it's very evident that we can't ask or expect companies to govern themselves, right? That's asking the watchman to oversee himself, right? You want to ensure that there is some level of government scrutiny, and that's where the second layer of co-regulation comes in, which is a group of companies will come together, Microsoft, Infosys, Amazon, and say, this is the lowest common denominator of our best practices. We all do X, Y, Z, right? And they will present that to the government, and the government will say, yes, now we expect everyone in this domain to do that. Which means tomorrow there is a new company, one of you creates a startup and creates a model operating in that particular domain. You are also expected to comply by it. You cannot say, I will do my own set of policies, right? So that's going to be level 2, which is a co-regulatory model. And the third piece will be strict regulation, right? Which is the companies have no say in this matter. The government will come and will say, if you are training a large language model to create some biochemical weapon, either you have to come to us for an explicit license to do that, or it is prohibited, whatever it is. That's where it is neither self-regulation nor is it co-regulation. The industry has no say in this matter. This is purely strict regulation from the government. So I think we need to discuss as a democracy, as a populace, what we want to be part of what, right? What should be self-regulation, what should be co-regulation, what should be strict. But I think the Indian regime will consist of at least these 3 layers.
And today we don't know where we are in any of these.
Well, I mean, based on the current sentiment, I can share some thoughts. I think it's very obvious that institutional capacity is low. So people want at least, maybe 50% of regulation to be self-regulation, co-regulation to be, 30% or so. And I don't think anybody in the Indian industry is comfortable with the government prescribing the norms. But I think in the next 2 to 3 years, those parameters will change, where I would say it would be at least 30%.